I am a male. Nevertheless, I am going to speak, contrary to what progressives feel I can speak about the government's funding of tampons, which actually is a reasonable thing for schoolgirls. I actually believe in that. Don't really believe in it beyond minority age. But here's the thing that I so roundly object to. It came up on a talk show hosted by Todd Feinberg here in Connecticut. A woman speaking with Todd, who is also male, saying, you can't understand what girls go through. Eliminating his ability to speak to an issue that he certainly understands decently. Now, maybe not quite the same way, correct. Males will never experience menstruation. But it does not knock out an educated and passionate male from opining and helping make policy that is good for females and hopefully good for all. This is the tip of an iceberg of a horrible development called intersectionality. Intersectionality is the progressive desire for higher and higher hierarchies of worthiness if you speak or write on something based on your skin color, maybe your sex, maybe your national heritage. With regard to male and female relations, where there is a difference, many progressives don't want to admit that, they have somewhat of a point. That I have never experienced what a schoolgirl did in high school and even middle school to cover up, to not be as fully concentrating, to be embarrassed. Okay, but I still hear from girls, now women, about their experiences. I can still help legislate to make their experiences better. The progressives don't want males to do this. And when it regards race-based policies, which shouldn't exist in the first place, but where they do, they silence people of another race. Now, it's evil to think that my race colors what I think. It is the opposite of what Dr. Martin Luther King and so many true civil rights leaders wanted. That your skin color dictates the way you think. They don't go deeply enough, okay? Within the very wide, various group of African Americans are so many point of views and so many experiences. Yes, many African Americans have an urban upbringing, but some do not. Suburban and even rural. Within urban, there are many privileged African Americans, there are many middle-class African Americans, there are some underclass African Americans. Their experiences have validity, not based on the race though, but more so based on their individual and small group identities. When you cut off a non-black from validly opining about what would be helpful for African Americans, you lose allies. You lose me. I'm a true liberal, and I am one that you want to hear. But if you say, no, you're white, and you can't possibly be heard with validity because of the way you were born, it's despicable and it's hurtful. Because, not to me, it's hurtful to the people who I might like to help. I am among, I believe, a fairly high echelon of knowledge about African American history, okay? I've studied it. At Dartmouth, I took a course specifically about Black American slavery. I've since then read about slavery in the Caribbean, slavery in Brazil, the slave trade that existed before the Africa to America slave trade. That was in the Middle East and Africa. I know about Jim Crow experiences. I study this stuff. And to some extent, I've lived it. My first employee, African American. My first business partner, African American. The kid that I most admired in high school, African American. I have enough experience, certainly not as much as some, but actually more than others about Black history and Black circumstances. And since I've also studied government and government power, I'm a very good person to hear about empowerment. The intersectional crowd, they don't want to hear it. Some of them anyway, have fears that what a conservative might say goes against their viewpoint, even if that conservative is Black. So there comes a big problem, because now of the right color and still not of the right mindset. The intersectionalists would like to cut that person off for some reason. They'll find it. Clarence Thomas, well, he's too privileged because he sat on the Supreme Court for 20 years. Go back to the male-female situation. I am more of a feminist than Hillary Clinton. I am one of the few politicians who has, yes, a sex-based welfare preference. You don't hear that from very many people, but I do believe in supporting, from government welfare, single parents, and that's typically women. She starts to lose tons of allies. Look, even on the issue of funding girls in high school during their menstrual periods, protection for it, folks, some girls never experience it or don't experience badness compared to others. So who are you going to listen to then? A tiny sliver who tend to be ones complaining. We who hear complaints, even though we might be men, are equally worthy of listening to. Don't cut off the messenger. Listen to the message. I'm Mark Stewart.